Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. Today it's the 8th of March 2019, which means two things. One, it's International Women's Day, and two, there's only a week remaining until The Division 2 comes out worldwide. Now the reason that that's relevant to this video, trust me, bear with me here, is that a couple weeks ago I was playing the open beta for The Division 2, and I got tweeted by a guy called TJ the Blind Gamer. Now TJ's been in the COD community for a while. He's played a load of zombies, he plays a load of MP, he plays it all as far as I'm aware. And TJ tweeted me to say, hey, it's really cool you're playing this game. Check out this one menu feature that they've added that's really damn cool. And so I went into the menus and I looked, and they've added a feature in The Division 2 that you can enable, and when it's turned on, it will read out any menu entry that you're currently hovering over.
Menu narration. Yes. Yes. Menu narration. 95, 100, 90, 80, 80, 6, 55.
And I've got to admit, I'm going to be totally honest here, when I first saw this, my initial reaction was, surely this is only useful for an incredibly small number of people. Like, surely no one really uses this sort of thing. Maybe one or two people here or there, but I mean, the adopt kind of rate of that sort of thing has to be really low, right? But then I started reading into it more, and I started reading about accessibility in games in general, and I realized that there is an entire world here that doesn't necessarily get talked about all that much, but that is really important to talk about, because by doing so, it makes games better for everyone. And a great example of that was highlighted in the video that I'm going to take a little clip from on screen here just to illustrate my point, and I'll link the full thing down below because it's a great video. I definitely recommend you give it a watch. But to summarize what's going on, this game was going to come out and it featured one particular way to control your character and move around the world. And the devs at the very last minute decided, you know what, this might be quite difficult for certain people, and so we're going to add 3 extra accessibility options to enable other players who might not be able to use a regular controller, for example, or just might struggle to hold a controller in the normal way and things like that, to still be able to move around the world. And they expected that 95% of people would use their original control scheme, and then maybe 5% would be split across those extra 3 accessibility movement options. And then the game released, and they looked at their stats and went, huh? It was split 25, 25, 25, 25. And so in that case, clearly, just adding those options into the game meant that a huge amount of people were able to experience the game differently to how they otherwise would have done, and in a much more comfortable way, a way that the devs didn't anticipate even in the first place. And all of this got me thinking, okay? I've talked in the past, here and there, about certain accessibility things that Treyarch could do or have done to make their games better. Black Ops 2 was praised in the past for adding accessibility options that helped for people with colorblindness. A more recent example might be the Der Reisendrache Easter egg. Originally, when that came out, you would get that urn that would talk to you, and there were no subtitles on the words that the urn was saying, and so if you were a deaf gamer, you wouldn't be able to hear anything about that quest, and you'd have to just fail the quest. Like, there was no way for you to do it, and I made a video talking about it. Actually, I'm not sure I mentioned it in a video originally, but I messaged one of the devs about it, and I said, hey, this should be super easy for you to fix. Would it be possible to get subs for this? And they eventually did actually patch subs into the game to make the quest a little bit easier for people that couldn't hear. And like I said, it makes the game better for everyone else, because even if you can hear, sometimes you gotta mute your TV. And if you've got to mute your TV, having subs is really useful. So there have been instances in the past of this kind of coming up in relation to COD and zombies, and I thought that today I would run through 1 or 2 other things that I think COD could be doing to make zombies even better. Some features that you didn't even probably realize that COD could really do with adding. We've talked about the screen reader idea that was in The Division 2. I'm sure that's been present in some other games as well, but potentially none as kind of high profile as The Division 2, because that's going to be a big game, and it's also going to be a game where you're navigating a lot of menus. You're constantly looking through your backpack, rifling through your loot, etc. So that screen reader is great. In the case of zombies, TJ currently has to memorize where everything is in Creator Class. Can you imagine how much of a pain in the butt that would be? Having to scroll through the entirety of all of the elixirs, all of the talismans, all of everything in the menus, and memorize exactly how many button presses it takes to get to all those options. If you could just have something read out for you instead, that would be so much easier. So that would be really cool, right? But there are a couple things that would affect the gameplay as well. For example, having subtitles is nice, but being able to change the size of subtitles is also something that would be really useful. In zombies, it's actually quite good because they are quite large, but you end up with massive, massive paragraphs of subtitle text on screen at a time, and that can really clog the screen up. So for a player like myself, I'd love to be able to make the subtitles smaller, and someone else who might be hard of hearing, for example, might want to make them bigger so they've got ample time to read them at any given time. Also, another thing that games like Assassin's Creed have done in the past that's really cool to see is add the option of adding a black box behind the subtitle text so it's even easier to read, because sometimes that text just blends in with the world around you and you can't really tell what they say because the contrast is really poor. But if you add an optional toggle for a black box, you're never going to have that problem. So that could be cool too. Another thing that TJ mentioned would be really helpful for him, because he doesn't have sight in his left eye and he hardly has sight in his right eye, and it's just a little bit of light perception, it's nothing else, would be sound effects playing when there's a prompt on screen for you to open a door or buy a gun off the wall, something like that. When the little hold square to rebuild barrier comes up, instead of having to hold square and then hear the noise, if there could just be a bing sound when the prompt popped up, then TJ would know every time when he was sliding along a wall and able to rebuild a barrier or buy a gun or open a door, etc. TJ also mentioned that in the chaos maps in Black Ops 4, the guns, etc. actually make some noise, which was really interesting. I've never noticed that, but I guess that helps him navigate around the world as well, because it gives him just extra touch points where he can say, okay, I know the gun's over there because I can hear it. Obviously, that's not quite as far as actually telling him when he's in range of being able to buy the gun, but it's still an improvement over them being silent. And this doesn't have to always be enabled in the game by any means, just a toggle option in the menus would be completely fine. Another thing that I noticed when I was watching TJ play zombies, and by the way, this guy is remarkable at zombies for the fact that he can't see. It's actually incredible how he's able to play the game and get through rounds. Like, I honestly take my hat off to the guy. I'm not wearing a hat, but I'm wearing a hat now, and I take my hat off to the guy. It's really remarkable. But I noticed in his games that he quite often will end up looking up or down, and he won't know that he's looking up or down. And so he's trying to shoot zombies because he thinks that his aim is level, is going straight forward, but actually he's pointing towards the sky or something. And there's no really easy way for him to correct his aim. And so what he said that he does is when he feels like his aim might be off, if he doesn't hit anything for a while or something, what he'll try and do is look down and knife the floor, because then he'll be able to hear that sound and he'll be able to sort of slowly try and re-angle himself to where he thinks he's aiming straight. But an easy solution to the problem here would be for Treyarch to add some kind of option where you could recenter your aim, just clicking a button and it would just snap to being horizontal, and that way he'd never have to do this entire process of looking down, knifing the floor, and trying to sort of figure out what angle he was currently pointing at. I think that this is something that you do see quite often actually in PC games, but it doesn't seem to pop up that much on console, so that could be a cool thing for them to add. Now, TJ also mentioned that his sight a couple years ago was actually much better. I mean, during Black Ops 1, it was okay, and then a couple years later, around the time of Call of Duty Ghosts, his sight started deteriorating a lot more, and by the end of the year, it had just completely gone. And so he's got a really unique perspective where he has seen the game. He used to be able to see it all right, but he was definitely not fully sighted, and he's then progressed into a point now where he can't see at all. And so he has got experience with sort of both sides of the coin there. And one thing that he said is that in Black Ops 2, the target finder was really useful because it would highlight zombies and it would also play a sound cue when you were actually aiming over them, like when your crosshairs were on them. And that would mean that despite the fact that his sight was deteriorating so much, he could still gain a little bit of a boost of information from the game to say, okay, we're going to give you the target finder and make it really visually clear if something in your sight is a zombie or not, and then on top of that, we're going to give you extra sound cues. Another thing that was mentioned on Twitter that is helpful for accessibility that I never even thought of, completely never thought of, is depth perception, the perk. Right now in Black Ops 4, depth perception will do a lot of those things that I've been talking about. It's a really cool addition, but I never use it because for me, it's sort of pointless in my opinion. I had just never thought of the fact that maybe that would actually be really useful for people with these sorts of disabilities. It's actually a really cool addition. Now, another thing that I think is a really, really cool feature, but one that we'll probably never see in Zombies, is the kind of communication wheel that you get in Apex Legends, and you also get in a game like Dota 2, for example. The ping system in Apex is incredible, and it means that you can be deaf and still effectively communicate with your team without having to worry about all the problems that would come with you not being able to talk to your team effectively in a voice chat like Discord, for example. Those ping systems mean that you're still completely functional as a player, you can still communicate with your team in all these different ways, and again, it's another example of a feature that is really helpful for players with disabilities, but also absolutely amazing for everyone else as well, because I think that ping system is the most useful thing in the entire damn game. It's one of the coolest features I've seen added to a game in a long time. The system's just amazing in Apex, it really is. And so seeing that sort of thing in other games would just be incredible for everyone. The closing comment that I want to give is just that accessibility and options in games really do make games better for everyone, and the cool thing is that games themselves inherently should be for everyone. There is so much good that games can do, and in an ideal world, it wouldn't matter if you were hard of hearing or partially sighted or whatever. So it would be really cool to see some of these in future in Zombies and in other games as well. And as much as I think it's unlikely that Treyarch are going to be able to add anything like this during Black Ops 4, seeing as the game's already been built, they've got all the underlying tech already finished up now, and so doing anything like this might be a little bit tricky to actually get in there. I'm hopeful that maybe this will spark an idea in one of the devs' heads or something like that for the future, so that when Black Ops 5 is on the cards and they're midway through development of that game, maybe we'll end up with a couple of these things sneaking their way in there and making the game better for everyone. Thanks for watching, guys. I've been MrRoflWaffles. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.